In this video, I'd like to go over how exactly to utilize, initialize, declare, and operate with arrays. Now, arrays are a very powerful tool, as you saw in the module intro. Arrays make it possible to manipulate and store and manipulate a lot of data and sort through that data in an organized and indexed fashion. Now, what we're going to do here today is we're going to go ahead and review how to make a program that inputs student grades, creates a class average, and then re-verifies the grades that you inputted. And we use a couple of the tools that your book talked about, in particular the enhanced for loop. But let's just start out with learning how to initialize an array. So initializing an array is pretty simple, and it's pretty much how you initialize any primitive variable. But it's a very arrays are objects, so you're gonna have to say what type of array it is. So for the grades, we're going to use a double. And we're going to say we have to use brackets to say that we're declaring an array. We're going to call this array grades. And we're going to create a new object, so we have to use the new keyword and double. And then we have to put in a parameter inside this bracket here to say how big the array will be, or what the capacity is. No, capacity is more for array lists. We'll get to that later. But how long the array is, and so we'll say typically you'll use a constant variable, constant integer. So we'll say final integer. We'll say students, and we'll have a constant of 4. We'll have 4 students in this array, and we're going to say students is how big this array will be. And it's powerful to use a constant up here. So if anywhere throughout the program, you can reference this constant variable and adjust what students exactly means, and it's not going to change based on you can't manipulate what this integer variable is. At least the user can. And we're going to call the class average. You create another double variable, and we'll call it class average. And we're going to obviously have to have user input, so we'll go ahead and import the scanner class from the utility folder, and then we'll go ahead and create a scanner class object, and we'll use keyboard again. Notice we're using the keyword new as well to initialize and call a new scanner object. So, all right. So now that we have that new scanner object, we're going to go ahead and talk to the user, and we're going to ask the user. We're tell the user, welcome to Java. Say to the Java programming course grade sheet, and we'll put a new line character, enter students. We'll use the students, and then we'll say grades. So here we'll read, welcome to Java programming welcome to Java Programming Course Grade Sheet. Enter 4 grades, right? And after that, we're going to want to accept a user input. So what we're going to want to type here is system.out print student 1. And we'll type in grades. We'll access a element in the grades in the grades array, and we'll access it by saying grades sub 0 is equal to keyboard dot next double. And so we'll go ahead and repeat that over and over again. And we can just really copy this 3 more times and change grade sub 0 to grade sub 1 is assigned next double, grade sub 2 is assigned next double, grade sub 3 is assigned next double. Now note, the index starts at 0, it ends at 3, so the length of the array is always n minus 1, or at least the index is always n minus 1, that's the end of the array. So now that we have that, and we can also change this as well. So student 1, student 2, student 3, and student 4. And we'll say class average is equal to grades sub 0 plus grades it's basically summing up the entire array. And now there are better ways to do this, and easier and more elegant ways to do this than hand jamming it, especially in substantially larger arrays, but we'll get to that later in the module. Grades sub 3. Okay, wrong brackets. Grades sub 3. And all of that will be divided by students. And so what we'll say here is system.out that print line the average grade in the class is, and then we'll use class average, and then we'll that should be it. And everything looks like it checks out, and let's go ahead and run this program. So welcome to the Java programming course grade sheet. Oh, I forgot a space up here, a little formatting error. And we'll say we want to put it at 98. Student 2's got 88. Student 3's has 87 or 78, and then a student 4 has a 68. And so we'll go ahead and enter that. The average, the class average is 83, and that checks out. So with that, that's one way of implementing this. Later in the module, we'll talk about how to sum entire array without hand jamming the numbers, hard coding it in. We'll use a looping sequence of some sort. But speaking of loops, let's talk about the for loop. The hands for loop is specifically designed for for utilization with arrays. Now, what the enhanced for loop buys you is it buys you a way to go through or iterate through the entire array in a very simple fashion, but it's not for every single situation, right? The enhanced for loop is particularly good if you want to iterate forward through the array. You want to iterate backwards through the array. You want to particularly find one particular piece of information in the array and manipulate it and change it out. But it's not particularly good for pretty much everything else besides that. So let's go ahead and use a for loop in this particular program. Let's say we'll declare the for loop down here, and we'll say we want to reconfirm the grades that we inputted into the array. We just simply want to restate the 4 grades. So we'll say for, and we'll declare a variable, and it'll be a local variable to just this loop, and we'll call it val. And we want to iterate through the array grades. Just like a typical for loop, it takes 2 brackets, and we'll also have to declare indexing variable up here. It'll be an integer, and we'll call it index. Set equal to 0. So that's our declaration, right? And we'll use that index to simply put a number next to the student's name, or to the student in the text output. And we'll say system out print line, and we'll say the grade you inputted for a student, and then we'll say index was, add a space, and then we'll say value. And then it'll iterate through each element in the grades array and output it, telling you exactly what you put in each element. And something else we want to put here is possibly a new line for formatting. A new line's character there. So let's go ahead and run this program. Alright, so welcome to the Java Programming course grade sheet, enter 4 grades. We'll say here, again, we'll do 98 plus 88 plus 78 plus 68. And the for loop, again, formatting always gets you. It'll loop through each element and output what was inputted as a grade. And notice that grades is a double array, and you have to have the local variable val also be a double, and val is outputted into the print. So those are some simple operations you can do with a for loop, or enhanced for loop, particularly for a array. Also note, like, using an array element based on its index position with the subscript, it's just like operating on any other primitive variable. It's just you're actually accessing it in an index fashion. Hope that was informative, and let me know if you have any questions about this particular section.